The Great Migration, 1910 to 1970. Chapter 1. The Early Years, 1910 to 1930. The Great Migration began in earnest around 1910, catalyzed by a confluence of socio-economic factors that pushed African Americans out of the South and pulled them towards the North. This chapter examines the early years of the migration, highlighting the initial waves of migrants, the conditions they left behind, and the new environments they encountered. The southern United States, in the early 20th century, was a region marked by severe racial segregation and economic disenfranchisement. The implementation of Jim Crow laws institutionalized racial discrimination, affecting every aspect of life, from education and healthcare to voting rights and legal protections. African Americans were subjected to violence and intimidation by groups like the Ku Klux Klan, which used terror to maintain white supremacy. Economically, the South was dominated by agriculture, particularly the cultivation of cotton. Many African Americans were trapped in sharecropping systems that were designed to keep them in perpetual debt and poverty. Despite the Emancipation Proclamation and the end of slavery, the economic conditions for African Americans had changed little. The boll weevil infestation of the 1910s further devastated cotton crops, exacerbating the financial hardships of black farmers. In contrast, the northern states offered the promise of industrial jobs with higher wages and the possibility of social mobility. Cities like Chicago, Detroit, New York, and Philadelphia became magnets for African American migrants. The outbreak of World War I in 1914 increased demand for industrial labor, as European immigration declined, and many northern men enlisted in the military. Northern factories, railroads, and other industries actively recruited southern black workers, often providing free transportation and assistance with housing. The journey north was arduous and filled with uncertainties. Migrants traveled by train, bus, and even on foot, carrying with them their hopes for a better future. They left behind tight-knit communities, family ties, and the familiarity of the southern landscape. The decision to migrate was often made collectively, with families and friends moving together to support one another in the new environment. Upon arrival in northern cities, African Americans faced both opportunities and challenges. While they found employment in factories, meatpacking plants, and steel mills, they also encountered discrimination and segregation. Housing was often limited to overcrowded and substandard neighborhoods, leading to the development of ghettos. Despite these hardships, migrants established vibrant communities, churches, and social organizations that provided support and the sense of belonging. The influx of African Americans into northern cities had profound effects on urban life. Migrants brought with them rich cultural traditions, including music, art, and cuisine, which began to influence the broader cultural landscape. Cities like Chicago and New York became centers of African American culture and intellectual life, giving rise to movements like the Harlem Renaissance. The presence of a growing black population also had political implications. African Americans began to exercise their right to vote in northern cities, contributing to shifts in political power and the election of black representatives. This newfound political influence would later play a crucial role in the fight for civil rights. The early years of the Great Migration set the stage for a transformative period in American history. African Americans left the oppressive conditions of the South in search of better opportunities in the North. Despite facing significant challenges, they built new lives and communities that would have lasting impacts on American society. The resilience and determination of these early migrants laid the foundation for subsequent waves of migration and the broader struggle for racial equality. Chapter 2. The Role of World War I. World War I was a pivotal event that significantly influenced the course of the Great Migration. This chapter explores how the war created economic opportunities in the North, disrupted traditional labor markets, and led to increased African American migration from the South. The entry of the United States into World War I in 1917 accelerated the demand for industrial production. Factories needed to produce weapons, ammunition, and other war supplies, leading to a surge in manufacturing jobs, with many white workers enlisted in the military and a decline in European immigration. Northern industries faced a labor shortage. This gap was filled by African American workers from the South, who were eager to escape the economic hardships and racial oppression of their home states. Northern businesses actively recruited African American labor. Labor agents were sent to southern states to attract black workers with promises of high wages, better working conditions, and assistance with relocation. Newspapers such as the Chicago Defender played a crucial role in spreading information about job opportunities in the North. These efforts were highly effective, leading to a significant increase in migration. The exodus of African American workers had a noticeable impact on the Southern economy. Plantation owners and agricultural businesses faced labor shortages, which disrupted the production of crops like cotton. This economic pressure, combined with the social changes brought about by the migration, began to challenge the traditional power structures of the South. For many African American migrants, the move to the North was a transition from rural to urban life. They found employment in various industries, including steel mills, meatpacking plants, and automobile factories. These jobs offered higher wages than agricultural work, although they were often physically demanding and came with their own set of challenges, including racial discrimination and dangerous working conditions. Migrants had to adapt to the fast-paced and crowded environments of northern cities. Housing shortages led to the development of black neighborhoods, where migrants could find community and support. Despite facing segregation and discrimination, these neighborhoods became centers of African American culture and social life. The arrival of African Americans in northern cities was not always welcomed by the local white population. Migrants often encountered hostility and racial violence, as white workers viewed them as competition for jobs and housing. Despite these challenges, African American migrants demonstrated remarkable resilience. They organized labor unions, participated in strikes, and fought for better working conditions and civil rights. World War I acted as a catalyst for the Great Migration, providing the economic opportunities and labor demand that drew African Americans to the North. The migration during this period laid the groundwork for the profound social, cultural, and economic changes that would continue throughout the 20th century. African Americans not only contributed to the war effort, but it also began to reshape the urban landscape and assert their place in American society. Chapter 3: Life in the South, Challenges and Motivations. To understand the motivations behind the Great Migration, it is essential to examine the conditions of life in the South that pushed millions of African Americans to leave their homes. This chapter delves into the social, economic, and political challenges faced by African Americans in the South, highlighting the factors that drove them to seek better opportunities elsewhere. The Jim Crow era, which followed the end of Reconstruction, was characterized by the institutionalization of racial segregation and discrimination. African Americans were subjected to a rigid system of laws that enforced separation in all public spaces, including schools, transportation, restrooms, and restaurants. These laws were designed to maintain white supremacy and disenfranchise black citizens. The Southern economy was predominantly agricultural, and African Americans were largely confined to low-paying, labor-intensive jobs. Sharecropping was a common practice, where black farmers worked on white-owned land in exchange for a share of the crops. This system was exploitative, often trapping sharecroppers in a cycle of debt and poverty. Despite their hard work, many black families struggled to make ends meet and had little hope of economic advancement. Racial violence was a pervasive threat in the South. African Americans lived under the constant fear of lynching and mob violence. The Ku Klux Klan and other white supremacist groups used terror to enforce racial hierarchies and intimidate black communities. This violence was often sanctioned or ignored by local law enforcement, leaving African Americans with little recourse for justice. Despite the legal protections theoretically provided by the 15th Amendment, African Americans in the South were systematically disenfranchised through a variety of means, including literacy tests, poll taxes, and grandfather clauses. These measures effectively barred most black citizens from voting, rendering them powerless to influence political change and perpetuating their marginalization. Access to education was severely limited for African Americans in the South. Schools for black children were underfunded, overcrowded, and lacked basic resources. Higher education opportunities were scarce, and those who sought to pursue advanced degrees often had to travel great distances or leave the South entirely. The lack of educational opportunities hindered social mobility and kept many African Americans in low-wage, unskilled jobs. In the 1910s, the boll weevil infestation devastated cotton crops across the South, further exacerbating the economic difficulties faced by African American farmers. The loss of their primary source of income forced many to consider leaving the South in search of better opportunities elsewhere. Despite the oppressive conditions, African American communities in the South were resilient and tightly knit. Churches, schools, and social organizations provided support and a sense of solidarity. Family networks played a crucial role in the migration process, as those who had already moved north sent back information and assistance to help others make the journey. Life in the South for African Americans during the early 20th century was marked by systemic oppression, economic exploitation, and racial violence. These conditions created a powerful push factor that drove millions to leave their homes in search of better opportunities in the North. The Great Migration was not just a physical relocation, but a profound act of resistance and a quest for dignity, equality, and a better life. Chapter 4: Northern Cities, Promises and Realities. The Great Migration was driven by the promise of better opportunities in northern cities, but the reality migrants encountered was often a mix of both hope and hardship. This chapter explores the experiences of African Americans as they settled in urban centers, the challenges they faced, and the communities they built. For many African Americans, the North represented a land of opportunity where they could escape the oppressive conditions of the South. The promise of higher wages, better living conditions, and the possibility of social mobility attracted millions to cities like Chicago, Detroit, New York, and Philadelphia. The North was also perceived as a place where African Americans could exercise their rights more freely and participate in the political process. The industrial boom in the North created a high demand for labor, which African American migrants were eager to fill. They found work in factories, steel mills, meatpacking plants, and other industries. These jobs offered higher wages than agricultural work in the South, providing a path to economic stability. However, the work was often grueling, and African Americans were typically relegated to the most dangerous and least desirable jobs. Finding adequate housing was one of the most significant challenges for African American migrants. Northern cities were not prepared for the sudden influx of new residents, leading to overcrowded and substandard living conditions. Many African Americans were confined to specific neighborhoods due to racial segregation and discriminatory housing practices, such as redlining and restrictive covenants. Despite these obstacles, black communities established vibrant cultural and social hubs. African American migrants brought with them a rich cultural heritage that began to influence the broader cultural landscape of northern cities. Neighborhoods like Harlem in New York City and the South Side of Chicago became centers of African American culture, art, and intellectual life. The Harlem Renaissance, a cultural movement during the 1920s, showcased the artistic and literary talents of African Americans and highlighted the cultural contributions of the black community. Access to education improved for many African Americans in the North, though significant disparities remained. Migrants sought better educational opportunities for their children, leading to increased enrollment in public schools. Higher education institutions in the North also became more accessible, allowing African Americans to pursue advanced degrees and professional careers. The migration had a significant impact on the political landscape of northern cities. African Americans became an important voting bloc, influencing local elections and advocating for civil rights. The increased political participation of African Americans in the North set the stage for future civil rights activism and legislative changes. Despite the relative freedoms of the North, African American migrants still face significant racism and discrimination. They encountered hostility from white residents who saw them as competition for jobs and housing. Racial violence and riots, such as the Chicago race riot of 1919, underscored the persistent racial tensions in northern cities. Discriminatory practices in employment, housing, and education continued to limit the opportunities available to African Americans. In the face of these challenges, African American migrants demonstrated remarkable resilience. They established churches, social clubs, and mutual aid societies that provided support and fostered a sense of community. These institutions played a crucial role, helping migrants navigate the complexities of urban life and advocate for their rights. The migration to northern cities offered African Americans new opportunities and a chance to escape the oppressive conditions of the South. However, the realities they encountered were often a mix of promise and hardship. Despite facing significant challenges, African American migrants built vibrant communities and contributed to the cultural, social, and political fabric of northern cities. Their resilience and determination laid the groundwork for the ongoing struggle for civil rights and equality. Chapter 5: The Impact of the Great Depression. The Great Depression of the 1930s had profound effects on the entire nation, including the African American communities that had formed in northern cities as a result of the Great Migration. This chapter examines the economic hardships faced by these communities during the Depression, as well as their responses and resilience. The Great Depression brought widespread unemployment and economic instability. African Americans, who were already in a precarious economic position, were disproportionately affected. Jobs that had attracted migrants to the North were suddenly scarce, and black workers were often the first to be laid off. The unemployment rate among African Americans soared, leading to increased poverty and hardship. The economic downturn exacerbated the already difficult housing situation. Many African American families struggled to pay rent, leading to evictions and homelessness. Overcrowded and substandard living conditions worsened, as families doubled up in small apartments to make ends meet. The discriminatory practices of landlords and real estate agents further limited housing options for African Americans. The federal government's response to the Great Depression included the creation of several relief programs under the New Deal. These programs, such as the Works Progress Administration, WPA, and the Civilian Conservation Corps, CCC, provided some relief to African American communities by offering employment opportunities. However, discrimination often limited their access to these programs, and black workers were frequently given the least desirable jobs. Despite the challenges, African American communities mobilized to support one another. Churches, social clubs, and mutual aid societies played crucial roles in providing assistance to those in need. These organizations distributed food, clothing, and other necessities, and they offered a sense of solidarity and hope in difficult times. The cultural vibrancy of African American communities continued during the Depression. Despite economic hardships, the Harlem Renaissance, which had begun in the 1920s, persisted into the 1930s, with artists, musicians, and writers continuing to produce influential work. This cultural movement provided an important outlet for expression and helped to sustain the spirit of the community. The economic crisis also spurred increased political activism within African American communities. The Depression highlighted the systemic inequalities faced by African Americans, leading to greater efforts to advocate for civil rights and social justice. Organizations such as the NAACP and the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters intensified their efforts to combat discrimination and improve economic opportunities for black workers. The Great Depression was a period of significant hardship for African American communities in the North, but it also revealed their resilience and capacity for solidarity. Despite facing severe economic challenges, these communities continued to support one another and advocate for their rights. The experiences of the Depression further underscored the need for systemic change and laid the groundwork for the civil rights movements of the following decades. Chapter 6: World War II and the Second Wave. World War II marked a second major wave of the Great Migration, as the demand for labor once again surged and African Americans sought new opportunities in northern and western cities. This chapter explores the impact of the war on migration patterns, employment opportunities, and the social and political changes that followed. The entry of the United States into World War II in 1941 led to a massive mobilization of the economy for the war effort. Factories shifted to wartime production, creating a high demand for labor. With many white men serving in the military, industries turned to African American workers to fill the labor shortage. This demand for labor spurred a second wave of migration, with African Americans moving not only to traditional northern industrial cities, but also to new destinations in the West, such as Los Angeles and San Francisco. World War II provided unprecedented employment opportunities for African Americans. They found jobs in defense industries, shipyards, and other sectors critical to the war effort. These jobs often offered better wages and working conditions than those available in the South. The Fair Employment Practices Committee (FEPC), established by President Franklin D. Roosevelt, aimed to prevent discrimination in defense industries, though enforcement was inconsistent. African Americans also served in the military during World War II, fighting for a country that still subjected them to segregation and discrimination. The experiences of black soldiers overseas, where they sometimes encountered less racial prejudice, further fueled their determination to fight for civil rights at home. The Double V campaign, which called for victory against fascism abroad and racism at home, symbolized a dual struggle faced by African Americans. The influx of African American migrants during the war years led to significant social changes in northern and western cities. Black communities expanded, and new cultural hubs emerged. However, this rapid population growth also intensified competition for jobs and housing, leading to racial tensions and sometimes violent clashes. The Detroit race riot of 1943 and other incidents highlighted the ongoing struggles for equality and justice. After the war, many African American migrants chose to stay in their new cities rather than return to the South. The post-war economic boom provided continued opportunities for employment, but also brought new challenges. The struggle for fair housing, equal employment opportunities, and desegregation intensified, setting the stage for the civil rights movements of the 1950s and 1960s. The second wave of the Great Migration further enriched the cultural landscape of American cities. African American contributions to music, art, literature, and other cultural forms continued to grow. Jazz, blues, and later rock and roll were profoundly influenced by the Black migration experience. These cultural contributions helped to shape American identity and fostered a greater appreciation for African American culture. World War II and the subsequent second wave of the Great Migration had a transformative impact on African American communities and American society as a whole. The war effort provided new opportunities for employment and social mobility, while also highlighting the persistent inequalities and discrimination faced by African Americans. The experiences of this period galvanized the civil rights movement and laid the groundwork for the significant social and political changes that would follow in the coming decades. Chapter 7: Cultural Contributions and the Harlem Renaissance. The Great Migration had a profound impact on American culture, particularly through the Harlem Renaissance, a cultural movement that emerged in the 1920s. This chapter explores the artistic, literary, and musical contributions of African Americans during this period and their lasting influence on American culture. The Harlem Renaissance was a cultural, social, and artistic explosion centered in the Harlem neighborhood of New York City. As African Americans migrated to northern cities, they brought with them a wealth of cultural traditions that began to flourish at their new urban environments. Harlem became a cultural mecca, attracting black artists, writers, musicians, and intellectuals from across the country. The Harlem Renaissance produced a remarkable body of literature that explored themes of racial identity, pride, and resistance. Writers like Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston, Claude McKay, and John Toomer captured the complexities of African American life and the struggles for equality. Their works highlighted the beauty and resilience of black culture, challenging the dominant narratives of the time and asserting the value of African American experiences. Music was a central element of the Harlem Renaissance, with jazz and blues taking center stage. Harlem's nightclubs, such as the Cotton Club and the Apollo Theater, became famous for their performances by legendary musicians like Duke Ellington, Louis Armstrong, Bessie Smith, and Billie Holiday. Jazz, with its improvisational style and emotional depth, became a symbol of the creativity and vitality of African American culture. The visual arts also flourished during the Harlem Renaissance. Artists like Aaron Douglas, Augusta Savage, and Jacob Lawrence created works that celebrated African American history and culture. Their art often depicted scenes of black life, from rural southern landscapes to bustling urban streets, capturing the spirit and resilience of the African American community. Theater and dance were important mediums for expressing the experiences and aspirations of African Americans during the Harlem Renaissance. Plays by writers like Langston Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston explored themes of racial identity and social justice. Dance forms like the Lindy Hop and the Charleston, performed in Harlem's ballrooms, became popular and influential across the country. The Harlem Renaissance was not only a cultural movement, but also a political one. It fostered a sense of racial pride and solidarity, encouraging African Americans to assert their rights and demand equality. The movement laid the groundwork for the civil rights struggles of the mid-20th century, as the cultural achievements of the Harlem Renaissance helped to challenge stereotypes and promote a more inclusive vision of American identity. The Harlem Renaissance was a defining moment in American cultural history, showcasing the artistic and intellectual contributions of African Americans. It transformed Harlem into a center of cultural innovation and laid the foundation for future movements in art, music, and literature. The legacy of the Harlem Renaissance continues to influence American culture and serves as a testament to the enduring creativity and resilience of the African American community. Chapter 8: The Civil Rights Movement, a Turning Point. The Great Migration set the stage for the Civil Rights Movement, which sought to dismantle segregation and achieve equality for African Americans. This chapter explores the connection between the migration and the Civil Rights Movement, highlighting key events, figures, and achievements. The migration of African Americans to northern cities created a critical mass of black voters and activists who began to push for political and social change. The experiences of migrants who had fled the oppressive conditions of the South informed their activism and fueled their determination to fight for civil rights. The migration also brought together diverse groups of African Americans who shared a common goal of achieving equality and justice. The Civil Rights Movement was led by a number of influential figures and organizations that played crucial roles in the struggle for equality. Leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, Rosa Parks, and Thurgood Marshall emerged as key voices in the movement. Organizations such as the NAACP, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference (SCLC), and the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee (S&CC) organized protests, legal challenges, and grassroots campaigns to combat segregation and discrimination. The civil rights movement was marked by a series of significant events and milestones that highlighted the struggle for justice and the resilience of African American communities. Key events included the Brown v. Board of Education decision in '54, which declared segregation in public schools unconstitutional, the Montgomery bus boycott, 1955-1956, sparked by Rosa Parks' refusal to give up her seat to a white passenger, the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom 1963, where Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his iconic I Have a Dream speech, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibited discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which aimed to eliminate barriers to black voting in the South. Northern cities played a crucial role in the civil rights movement, serving as centers of activism and support. African Americans in cities like Chicago, Detroit, and New York organized protests, voter registration drives, and campaigns for economic justice. The migration had created a politically active and engaged black population that was instrumental in pushing for legislative and social change. The civil rights movement faced significant challenges and resistance from both individuals and institutions. Segregationists and white supremacist groups used violence and intimidation to oppose desegregation efforts. Despite these obstacles, the movement persisted, driven by the courage and determination of its leaders and participants. The civil rights movement was a turning point in American history, challenging the systemic racism and inequality that had long plagued the nation. The Great Migration played a crucial role in shaping the movement, as the experiences and activism of African American migrants laid the groundwork for the struggle for justice. The achievements of the civil rights movement transformed American society and continue to inspire efforts for equality and human rights today. Chapter 9. Stories of Resilience and Struggle. The Great Migration was a period of profound change and challenge for African Americans. This chapter highlights individual stories of resilience and struggle, showcasing the personal experiences of those who participated in the migration and the impact it had on their lives. Individual stories provide a powerful lens through which to understand the Great Migration. These narratives capture the hopes, fears, and determination of African Americans who left their homes in search of better opportunities. Some stories highlight the successes and achievements of migrants, while others reveal the hardships and discrimination they faced. The migration was often a family and community effort, with individuals relying on networks of relatives and friends for support. Letters, oral histories, and family stories revealed the important role of these networks in facilitating the migration and helping newcomers adjust to life in the North. Women played a crucial role in the Great Migration, both as migrants and as anchors of family and community life. Their stories often highlight the dual challenges of seeking employment and maintaining family stability. Women worked in a variety of roles, from domestic service to industrial labor, and their contributions were essential to the survival and success of migrant families. The experiences of children during the Great Migration provide unique insights into the impact of this period on the next generation. Many children of migrants grew up in urban environments very different from the rural South, navigating new educational opportunities and social dynamics. Their stories reflect the challenges and opportunities of growing up in a rapidly changing society. Despite the numerous challenges, African American migrants demonstrated remarkable resilience and adaptability. They built new lives in unfamiliar environments, created vibrant communities, and fought for their rights and dignity. These stories of resilience underscore the strength and determination that characterized the Great Migration. The personal stories of the Great Migration bring to life the experiences of those who lived through this transformative period. These narratives highlight the human dimension of historical events, revealing the hopes, struggles, and achievements of African American migrants. Their resilience and determination continue to inspire and inform our understanding of this critical chapter in American history. The Great Migration was a defining moment in American history, reshaping the demographic, cultural, and political landscape of the nation. The movement of millions of African Americans from the rural South to the urban North had profound and lasting effects on American society. The migration resulted in significant demographic changes, with African American populations in northern cities growing rapidly. This shift altered the social and cultural fabric of these cities, creating new opportunities and challenges for both black and white residents. The Great Migration had a profound impact on American culture, particularly through the contributions of African Americans in music, literature, art, and other cultural forms. The Harlem Renaissance and subsequent cultural movements showcased the richness and diversity of black culture, influencing the broader American cultural landscape. The migration also had a significant impact on American politics. The increased political participation of African Americans in northern cities helped to shape local and national political agendas. The civil rights movement, which was deeply connected to the experiences of migrants, achieved landmark legislative changes that transformed American society. Economically, the Great Migration opened new opportunities for African Americans, though significant disparities and challenges remained. The movement of black labor to northern industries contributed to the economic development of these regions and highlighted the need for continued efforts to address economic inequality and discrimination. While the Great Migration brought many positive changes, it also underscored the ongoing struggles for equality and justice. African Americans continued to face significant challenges, including racism, economic exploitation, and political disenfranchisement. The legacy of the Great Migration is a reminder of the importance of continuing the fight for civil rights and social justice. The Great Migration was a monumental chapter in American history, marked by both profound challenges and remarkable achievements. The movement of African Americans from the South to the North reshaped the nation and laid the foundation for future struggles for equality and justice. The resilience, creativity, and determination of those who participated in the Great Migration continue to inspire and inform our understanding of American history and the ongoing quest for a more just and equitable society. Chapter 10. The Role of Media and Communication. The dissemination of information played a crucial role in the Great Migration, as newspapers, letters, and other forms of communication helped African Americans make informed decisions about leaving the South and settling in the North. This chapter explores the impact of media and communication on the migration process and the ways in which African Americans use these tools to navigate their new environments. African American newspapers, such as the Chicago Defender, the Pittsburgh Courier, and the Baltimore Afro-American, played a pivotal role in the Great Migration. These publications provided crucial information about job opportunities, housing, and the social conditions in northern cities. They also offered a platform for sharing success stories and cautionary tales, helping potential migrants weigh the risks and benefits of relocating. Letters between family members and friends served as a vital means of communication in the Great Migration. These personal correspondence often contained detailed accounts of life in the North, including the challenges and opportunities faced by migrants. Family networks were instrumental in facilitating the migration process, as those who had already moved often provided guidance, financial support, and assistance in securing housing and employment for newcomers. Oral histories and word-of-mouth communication were also important in spreading information about the Great Migration. Stories told by returning migrants, church leaders, and community organizers helped to shape perceptions of the North and influence decisions to migrate. These oral accounts provided a more personal and immediate perspective on the migration experience, complementing the information provided by newspapers and letters. Media and communication played a key role in advocacy and mobilization efforts during the Great Migration. African American newspapers and radio programs advocated for civil rights and social justice, raising awareness about issues such as racial discrimination, labor exploitation, and political disenfranchisement. These platforms also mobilized support for initiatives aimed at improving the conditions of African American communities in the North. Photography and visual media documented the experiences of African American migrants, providing a powerful visual record of the Great Migration. Photographers like Gordon Parks and documentary projects, such as the Farm Security Administration, captured images of African Americans as they navigated their new environments. These visual records helped to humanize the migration experience and brought attention to the struggles and achievements of African American communities. Media and communication were essential tools for African Americans during the Great Migration, providing information, support, and advocacy. Newspapers, letters, oral histories, and visual media played crucial roles in shaping the migration process and helping African Americans navigate their new lives in the North. These forms of communication only facilitated the practical aspects of migration, but also fostered a sense of solidarity and community among migrants. Chapter 11. Economic Transformations and Labor Movements. The Great Migration significantly altered the economic landscape of the United States, as African Americans moved into industrial and urban labor markets. This chapter examines the economic transformations brought about by the migration and the role of labor movements in advocating for the rights and interests of African American workers. The migration of African Americans to northern cities coincided with a period of industrial expansion, creating a high demand for labor in factories, steel mills, shipyards, and other industries. African American migrants filled many of these positions, often taking on the most difficult and dangerous jobs. Despite facing discrimination and segregation in the workplace, their labor was essential to the growth of the American industrial economy. Labor unions played a complex role in the lives of African American workers. While some unions excluded black workers or maintained segregated locals, others began to recognize the importance of including African Americans in their ranks. The Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, led by A. Philip Randolph, was a notable example of a labor union that successfully organized African American workers and advocated for their rights. The union's efforts laid the groundwork for broader labor movements and civil rights activism. Despite the opportunities presented by industrial employment, African American workers faced significant economic disparities and challenges. They were often paid less than their white counterparts and were relegated to the lowest paying and least desirable jobs. Discriminatory practices in hiring, promotion, and workplace conditions limited their economic mobility and perpetuated cycles of poverty. In response to economic discrimination, many African Americans turned to entrepreneurship, establishing their own businesses to serve the needs of their communities. Black-owned businesses, including grocery stores, barber shops, beauty salons, and newspapers, became important economic and social hubs. These enterprises provided employment opportunities and helped to build economic self-sufficiency within African American neighborhoods. The New Deal programs of the 1930s, introduced by President Franklin D. Roosevelt in response to the Great Depression, had a mixed impact on African American communities. While some programs, such as the Works Progress Administration, WPA, and the Civilian Conservation Corps, CCC, provided much-needed employment and relief, others were administered in ways that reinforced racial inequalities. Discrimination in the implementation of New Deal policies highlighted the ongoing struggle for economic justice. African American women played a critical role in the economic transformations of the Great Migration. Many worked in domestic service, while others found employment in factories, hospitals, and other sectors. Despite facing double discrimination based on race and gender, their contributions were vital to the economic stability and progress of migrant families and communities. The Great Migration brought about significant economic transformations as African Americans entered the industrial workforce and contributed to the growth of urban economies. Despite facing discrimination and economic disparities, African American workers demonstrated resilience and resourcefulness, advocating for their rights through labor movements and building economic self-sufficiency through entrepreneurship. The economic impact of the Great Migration, the foundation for continued struggles for economic justice and equality. Chapter 12. The Second Great Migration, 1941 to 1970. The period between 1941 and 1970 saw a continuation and expansion of the Great Migration, often referred to as the Second Great Migration. This chapter explores the factors that drove this second wave of migration, the experiences of African American migrants during this period, and the long-term impact on American society. The Second Great Migration was driven by many of the same factors as the first, including the persistent racial discrimination and economic hardships of the South. However, new factors also came into play, including the economic opportunities created by World War II and the subsequent post-war boom, the demand for labor in defense industries, and the growth of the service sector in northern and western cities attracted millions of African Americans seeking better employment prospects and living conditions. While the First Great Migration primarily involved movement to northern industrial cities, the Second Great Migration saw a significant number of African Americans moving to western cities such as Los Angeles, Oakland, and Seattle. The defense industry in California and the Pacific Northwest offered numerous job opportunities, drawing migrants to these regions. The urbanization of the West Coast diversified the geographic distribution of African American populations in the United States. African American migrants during the Second Great Migration faced both challenges and opportunities in their new urban environments. While they found better employment prospects and improved living conditions compared to the South, they also encountered racial segregation, housing discrimination, and economic inequality. The growth of African American neighborhoods in cities like Los Angeles and Chicago led to the development of vibrant cultural and social communities, but also to tensions and conflicts over resources and space. The Second Great Migration coincided with the height of the civil rights movement, which sought to dismantle institutionalized racism and secure equal rights for African Americans. The migration contributed to the political and social momentum of the movement, as the increased presence of African Americans in northern and western cities amplified their political influence. Key legislative achievements during this period, such as the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, were instrumental in addressing some of the systemic inequalities faced by African American migrants. The cultural impact of the Second Great Migration was profound, as African American migrants brought their traditions, music, art, and culinary practices to new regions. The migration enriched the cultural tapestry of American cities, influencing popular culture and contributing to the development of new artistic movements. The emergence of soul music, the Black Arts movement, and the rise of influential figures in literature and politics were all part of the broader cultural contributions of African American migrants during this period. The Second Great Migration had long-term consequences for American society, reshaping the demographic and cultural landscape of the nation. The migration helped to solidify the presence of African American communities in northern and western cities, contributing to the diversification and enrichment of urban life. However, the challenges of economic inequality, racial segregation, and social justice remained pressing issues, highlighting the ongoing struggle for equality and human rights. The Second Great Migration was a continuation of the transformative movement of African Americans from the South to urban centers across the United States, driven by a combination of economic opportunities and the quest for civil rights. This migration had a lasting impact on American society, shaping the cultural, social, and political landscape of the nation. The experiences and contributions of African American migrants during this period continue to resonate in contemporary discussions of race, equality, and justice. Chapter 13. The Legacy of the Great Migration. The Great Migration, encompassing both its first and second waves, left an indelible mark on the United States. This chapter explores the enduring legacy of the Great Migration, examining its impact on American culture, politics, economics, and social dynamics. The Great Migration brought a profound cultural enrichment to American society. African American migrants introduced new music, art, literature, and culinary traditions to the cities they settled in. The Harlem Renaissance, jazz, blues, and later movements like hip-hop all have roots in the cultural exchanges that occurred during the migration. These cultural contributions have become integral to the American identity, influencing generations of artists and shaping the nation's cultural landscape. The political impact of the Great Migration was significant, as the migration shifted the demographic balance in many cities, leading to increased political influence for African American communities. The rise of African American political leaders, the growth of the civil rights movement, and the push for legislative changes were all influenced by the migration. The political activism of African Americans during and after the migration helped to bring about crucial changes in civil rights laws and policies, advancing the cause of equality and justice. Economically, the Great Migration played a crucial role in the development of urban industries and the diversification of the American workforce. African American workers were essential to the growth of key industries, particularly during times of economic expansion. However, the migration also highlighted persistent economic disparities and challenges, including job discrimination, wage gaps, and unequal access to housing and education. These issues continue to be central to discussions of economic justice and policy reform. The Great Migration reshaped social dynamics in American cities, leading to the growth of diverse and vibrant African American communities. These communities became centers of social, cultural, and political life, fostering a sense of solidarity and collective identity. However, the migration also exposed and intensified racial tensions and conflicts, as migrants navigated the complexities of integration and discrimination in their new environments. The legacy of these social dynamics continues to influence contemporary discussions of race relations and social cohesion. The legacy of the Great Migration includes the ongoing struggles for equality and justice faced by African American communities. While the migration brought many opportunities and advancements, it also highlighted the deep-seated issues of systemic racism and inequality that persist in American society. The fight for civil rights, economic justice, and social inclusion remains a critical part of the legacy of the Great Migration, inspiring new generations to continue the work of those who came before them. The Great Migration was a transformative period in American history, with far-reaching implications for the nation's culture, politics, economy, and social fabric. The legacy of the migration is a testament to the resilience, creativity, and determination of African American communities. As we reflect on this legacy, it is important to recognize both the progress that has been made and the challenges that remain, continuing to strive for a more just and equitable society. Chapter 14. Reflections on the Great Migration. Reflecting on the Great Migration allows us to understand its profound impact on American history and its continuing relevance today. This chapter delves into personal reflections, scholarly analyses, and contemporary perspectives on the migration's significance. The personal reflections of individuals who experienced the Great Migration provide a deeply human perspective on this historical movement. Oral histories memoirs, and autobiographies reveal the hopes, fears, struggles, and triumphs of those who made the journey from the south to the north. These personal stories highlight the diversity of experiences and the resilience of the migrants, offering valuable insights into the lived realities of this transformative period. Scholarly analyses of the Great Migration have explored its causes, processes, and consequences from various disciplinary perspectives. Historians, sociologists, economists, and cultural theorists have all contributed to a rich body of research that examines the migration's impact on American society. These analyses provide a comprehensive understanding of the migration's complexity, including its demographic shifts, economic implications, cultural contributions, and political significance. Contemporary perspectives on the Great Migration highlight its ongoing relevance in discussions of race, migration, and social justice. The migration is often referenced in debates about urbanization, gentrification, and economic inequality. Understanding the historical context of the Great Migration can inform contemporary policy discussions and efforts to address the challenges faced by African American communities today. Reflecting on the Great Migration offers important lessons for understanding the broader themes of migration, displacement, and resilience. The migration underscores the importance of mobility and agency in the pursuit of better opportunities and the quest for justice. It also highlights the need for systemic change to address the root causes of inequality and discrimination. These lessons are relevant not only to the African American experience, but also to other migrant and marginalized communities around the world. The Great Migration remains a defining moment in American history, shaping the nation's cultural, social, and political landscape. Its enduring significance lies in the ways it transformed African American life and contributed to the broader American narrative. The migration's legacy continues to resonate, reminding us of the power of collective action and the importance of striving for a more equitable society. Reflecting on the Great Migration allows us to appreciate its profound impact and its continuing relevance. The personal stories, scholarly analyses, and contemporary perspectives on the migration offer a rich and nuanced understanding of this critical chapter in American history. As we look to the future, the lessons and legacies of the Great Migration inspire us to continue the work of building a more just and inclusive society. Chapter 15. Moving Forward. The Future of Migration and Social Justice. As we move forward, the legacy of the Great Migration provides valuable insights into the future of migration and social justice in the United States. This chapter explores the contemporary implications of the Great Migration and considers the future of migration and social justice efforts. The United States continues to experience significant migration patterns, both domestically and internationally. Understanding the historical context of the Great Migration can inform our approach to contemporary migration issues, including the experiences of Latinx, Asian, and African migrants. The lessons learned from the Great Migration can help shape policies that promote inclusion, equity, and justice for all migrants. Advances in technology and communication are transforming the migration experience. Social media, digital communication, and online resources provide new ways for migrants to connect, share information, and advocate for their rights. These tools can help to build stronger support networks and facilitate the integration of migrants into their new communities. The legacy of the Great Migration, with its emphasis on communication and community support, remains relevant in this digital age. Economic inequality remains a pressing issue for many communities, including those affected by migration. The experiences of African American migrants during the Great Migration highlight the importance of addressing systemic economic disparities and promoting economic justice. Efforts to create equitable employment opportunities, fair housing policies, and access to quality education are essential for building a more just society. The fight for social justice and civil rights is an ongoing struggle. The legacy of the Great Migration, with its emphasis on resilience and advocacy, continues to inspire contemporary movements for racial and social justice. Building on this legacy is a commitment to challenging systemic racism, advocating for policy changes, and fostering a culture of inclusion and equity. Creating inclusive communities is essential for promoting social cohesion and equity. The experiences of African American migrants during the Great Migration highlight the importance of community support and solidarity. Efforts to build inclusive communities should focus on fostering connections, promoting understanding, and addressing the needs of all residents, regardless of their background. Remembering and honoring the legacy of the Great Migration is crucial for understanding our past and shaping our future. Historical memory helps to ensure that the experiences and contributions of African American migrants are recognized and valued. Education and public history initiatives can play a key role preserving this legacy and promoting a deeper understanding of the migration's impact. The future of migration and social justice in the United States is shaped by the legacy of the Great Migration. Understanding this history provides valuable insights for addressing contemporary challenges and building a more equitable and inclusive society. As we move forward, the lessons of the Great Migration inspire us to continue the work of advocating for justice, promoting equality, and supporting the aspirations of all migrants. The Great Migration was a defining moment in American history, transforming the lives of millions of African Americans and reshaping the nation's cultural, social, and political landscape. Its legacy continues to influence contemporary discussions of race, migration, and social justice. By reflecting on this history and learning from the experiences of those who lived through it, we can build a more just and inclusive future for all. Thanks for watching.